A new lawsuit from the U.S. Virgin Islands Attorney General Denise George accuses J.P. Morgan Chase of facilitating Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation and covering it up, according to the lawsuit. The bank and its employees knew they were facilitating Epstein's sexual abuse and sex trafficking conspiracy to coerce young women and underage girls to engage in commercial sex acts, according to the accusations.
According to Insider, the bank concealed its conduct by failing to follow red flag laws. And the section of the lawsuit that details how J.P. Morgan allegedly turned a blind eye to Epstein's conduct is heavily redacted. A representative from J.P. Morgan declined to comment to Insider on this matter. Insider writes, the Virgin Islands prosecutor Denise George lost her job days after suing J.P. Morgan in connection with the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. According to Law and Crime, George's office did not immediately respond to Law and Crime's request for comment sent yesterday. So this is a kind of a crazy story. The prosecutor in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Jeffrey Epstein's sex island was located, filed suit making these allegations under, I think, RICO law. And almost immediately is fired. As I've read, there has been no alternative explanation for why she was fired. And the timing is sort of incredible.
Yeah, she's filing a lawsuit alleging a cover-up, and then she herself gets fired. So you would say, I mean, the reaction many people would have is that, well, the cover-up is continuing. She is being punished for trying to reveal what is going on with J.P. Morgan Chase. Now, we don't really know many of the details here. The other side, you could argue, is maybe the governor of the Virgin Islands thought this lawsuit has no merit, and she's just trying to make a name for herself or something, and it would be embarrassing, and so then he fires her for doing that, although he didn't say he was firing her for that reason. He just said, like, thank you for your service.
You could offer an alternative explanation that would help to assuage people's feelings that there's something conspiratorial going on here.
So what do you think is again, because it's not clear yet, what do you think is the J.P. Morgan connection, that he's making payments to various people, or maybe he's paying off underage people or something, and that is something that J.P. Morgan should have taken notice of? So
a lot of the court documents are redacted, which prevents us from knowing all of what there is to know. However, what we do know is that in the lawsuit that was filed, the plaintiffs accused the banks of, quote, providing the requisite financial support for the continued operation of Epstein's international sex trafficking organization in violation of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, that's the RICO Act, a U.S. law used to target illegal conspiracies that was originally designed to target organized crimes. Now, RICO law has been used in ways that are gross overreaches to get people who I would argue should not be over-policed and criminalized, but it also has been the thing that has enabled law enforcement to get some genuine criminals that otherwise are careful enough to avoid.
It's also something people who don't know anything about the law always say, oh, is that RICO? Usually it's not. Usually that is not RICO.
Well, the lawsuit goes on to say that Epstein's sex trafficking venture was not possible without the assistance and complicity of a financial institution, specifically a banking institution, which provided his operation with an appearance of legitimacy and special treatment to the sex trafficking venture, thereby ensuring its continued operation, et cetera, et cetera. So look, I think the implications here for the Virgin Islands are potentially significant. It is a place that is known to be a tax haven and a place that provides a lot of economic opportunities for folks who are trying to avoid certain regulatory restrictions in the United States and in other parts of the world, and gets a lot of revenue from being a haven of sorts. So it could be that there's a lot of political pressure on this prosecutor, George here, not to open the door to the kind of...
not to spook potential people who are going to put their assets or their banking
for whatever reason,
Islands.
including potentially sex trafficking reasons. So, I mean, this is a big question. I mean, we saw this a little bit with the Kanye fiasco, the choice of J.P. Morgan to shut down his account, kind of self-politicizing, inserting themselves and being something other than a kind of neutral provider and carrier in that sort of a situation. And it is interesting to see whether or not, are they going to, continue to say, oh, I'm just neutral, I'm allowed to do whatever I want, it's not my business to get involved in people's affairs? Or is this a case where they had bigger responsibility not to continue to bank for someone? I mean, it's an odd comparison. Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted of all kinds of sexual crimes previously in his life before his last imprisonment that resulted in his death. And banks were happy to continue banking with this known convicted sexual predator.
We should read this statement from JP Morgan. They say, this is a statement from JP Morgan. They say the company ended its relationship with Epstein long before his ongoing misconduct became known. Since then, JP Morgan Chase has cooperated with investigations into Epstein and others.
Do they mean the second accusation and trial or the first one from whatever it was, the late 90s?
Right.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting case. It will be interesting to see if there's actually any more substantive
there's a lot. I mean, there's so many institutions with tied to Harvard, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Harvard, I know, had to investigate itself.
Absolutely. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein was a high school teacher at, what was it, Dalton, a very Tony private school in New York City. I mean, people who have had reason to know about his proclivities have put him in positions of power and proximity to young women for decades. And it is shocking, frankly, how few heads have rolled over that outside of, Jeffrey Epstein's own proverbial head. So look, we'll continue to follow this.
And we'll have more Rising right after this.